Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I have with me a very accomplished woman leader from Florida, USA, Donna Orender. Donna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Donna is the founder and CEO of Orender Unlimited and Generation W. She is the former president of the Women's National Basketball Association of USA. She has been recognized as one of the top 10 most powerful women in sports. She's been recognized by Newsweek as amongst the 100 most influential people. She's a best-selling author of a book titled Wowsdom, The Girl's Guide to the Positive and the Possible. What an amazing journey you've had. But let's start, Donna, by asking you about your journey from a professional basketball athlete to an entrepreneur supporting women and girls.
Well, they're very much tied together, unknowingly at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was a young athlete growing up, a young girl in a world that really didn't appreciate or really give the signals to girls that this was something they should do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they internalized that in some way, but I love sports. I continue to love sports. I believe in sports as a global opportunity to elevate all of the human population, because I believe that when you elevate girls and women, you elevate us all.
Absolutely.
So that began with, the fact that I love to compete. I played lots of sports, 7 sports in high school. I ultimately became a professional basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a girl, no one could have told me that could have happened because it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through that, actually learning the lessons of competing in sports,
Mm-hmm.
as well as being part of a opportunity that didn't encourage me, gave me this resilience and grit.
Mm-hmm.
So that when it came to ideas and opportunities and businesses, I didn't quite hesitate. I just kind of dove into what I thought could be something that would help other people.
Fascinating. And that's when you started Orender Unlimited and Generation W. Tell me about what you do here.
Well, actually, it was after I left the WNBA. And the WNBA, I should say, which is the Women's National Basketball Association. Mm-hmm. It actually is global. It's based in the US. We have athletes that come from all over the world. And I was really on the leading edge, the leading wave, if you will, of commerce and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned really firsthand in a way that I actually did not realize I had learned before, how the world felt about women and girls.
Mm-hmm.
From a cultural, commercial, social equity point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, when my time was done there, I knew that was work that I wanted to continue to do, because I thought it was so essential, important, not only for the direct impact on women and girls and the opportunities and the voices that they would have, but also for, as I said before, for all of our businesses. We are in a war for talent. I hate to use the word war in this time, but we are competing devilishly for talent all over the world. And it's really a shame. As a leader of a team, would you ever take the field with only having 50% of your talent available, developed, ready to go? And so that really is a big part of my work today with Generation W.
And when I was reading about you, Donna, your mission was fascinating: to educate, inspire, connect, and fuel the power of women's leadership. Fascinating mission, but help me understand, what are you doing in each of these areas, and maybe give me some examples.
Absolutely. When we first started our initiative, it was a thought leadership event, and it was located actually in a place in America that some people doesn't think has had thought leadership. I live in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. I am very, very proud of where I live. It has become a forward-thinking, innovative community that's continuing to grow. And I thought the idea of bringing in and connecting people around thoughts and ideas, just as you're doing in such a remarkable and impactful way, was important. And then we began to do other things. For example, we realized that all politics are local. And that you talk about something, let's say we were talking about water quality. That's something obviously very relevant in India, but relevant in the United States. And they say, well, 95% of the water quality is excellent. What happens when you live in Flint, Michigan, where the water quality is not excellent? Right? So these national numbers tend to really mask what's happening in your neighborhood. So we decided that we would initiate a study that showed where were the ideas? Where were the laws? Where were the policies and guidelines being developed, and by who in our community, so that we can determine where the bias was and how we possibly can implement them. And obviously, well, not obviously, but it clearly showed in many, many of the ways that women weren't part of the process at all. And yet we're 51% of the population. And so therefore we began an initiative that's now been taken over by our city and our chamber to really be proactive in balancing in a very positive way. This is not about taking something away, which is often problematic in this work. It's about adding to the whole, better decision-making and opportunity for a collective community to advance itself in a way that is better for everyone.
Amazing. What are the areas you are working on to support women and girls around the world? And I know you're doing some work in India as well.
Well, you know, what we did was in our second year, we in our thought leadership conference, where we have now over 1,300 people attend in person, and now we've developed a live stream, because obviously the pandemic has cultivated a new audience of technology in a way they didn't before. So we had 7 girls on our stage who were very, very diverse. We asked them, who are you? What's important to you? And how do we as women help you? That led to the beginning. It was going to be 10 years. We're going to celebrate 10 years of a program, Generation Wow, which is all about exposing and teaching girls about the positive and the possible. And it's not just a group of girls, it's all girls. Because we really believe that when we are exposed to each other at a young age, we can lead together and learn together and live together from youngsters, then we will ultimately lead together as adults, because we'll have this greater familiarity. Again, it's exactly what you're doing, bringing people from all parts of the world to share their stories, to let us understand that our commonalities truly are strong and drive a collective thinking of how we can make us better. And I know this is a time when it's hard to see it. There are days I'm overwhelmed by it, but I do know that it's this day-to-day work, this day-to-day of connection of people and humanity that actually will be the driver of making sure that we can stay on a positive path as opposed to a destructive one.
Amazing. And, a question I'm sure you've been asked many times. What are some of the lessons you have learned from your career in sports that you have brought to your current challenges, and how are you addressing them?
Every day I live those lessons, and I just want to say, for all of us, no matter what your age, and I know there's a younger group that watches this, the lessons are to be learned every day. They never ever stop. When we stop learning, then we're no longer vital, right? We have to learn every day. But I will tell you what some of the things, 2 things in particular. One, I don't know that I was the most gifted physical athlete, right? I didn't jump the highest. I didn't run the fastest. I was going to be one of the best. And what I learned was, when you really put the work in, really intentional, committed work, it's not working, it's working smarter and harder. That you learn to dig into yourselves in ways you could not imagine. I learned I have a reservoir that I can pull from, and that ultimately, no matter what the problem is, as difficult and challenging as it could be, that I can find a way to be able to tackle it. And I can tell you, like, every day there's a problem. Okay, I know it's here. I can figure this out. I can get overwhelmed, but I can work through that to get to a place of productivity and ultimately success. And I can't think of a better lesson than that, right? One that, like, this ability of a living resilience of a well of opportunity that we can summon, right? And what happens also is, when you begin to have success, right? Okay, well, this game, I had great defense, but I was able to score. I was able to figure it out. Well, then I can ultimately do that again. And it doesn't have to be in a game, right? All of those lessons are transferable to life, which is why I believe sport, and it doesn't have to be elite sports. It just has to be competition. Getting out there and learning how to compete is so important.
Well said. Well said. So moving on, Donna, you work on a lot of inequity challenges with women and minority leaders.
Yes.
For our viewers and listeners, give me your perspective on what are some of these inequity challenges.
I'm sorry, what was that?
What are some of these challenges?
A lot of the challenges is about, well, there's initially exposure, right? People, we do not know what we do not know. That, right? So how do we know that? So that's related to exposure, having the opportunity to be exposed, and then having the opportunity to have access to those things you're exposed to. And then at the core and underneath all of it is an ongoing bias that we all have. And I recently spoke to a major global company, actually you probably would know, about this idea of breaking the bias. And the first thing we all have to understand is we're all biased, and it doesn't mean we're bad people because we're biased. We're born with bias. We are truly, right, products of the street we grew up in, the house that we lived in, the parents that we had, where our grandparents came from, the communities we grew up in, right? The education we have, all of that combines to create a worldview, and it changes and it shifts. The most important thing is to become aware of those biases that we have inhaled, right? Surrounded by, and how they impact our thinking, so that we can open our thinking, the aperture of our thinking, right? To be able to be broader in our scope and understand where other people are. Right? And I'll give you like just a little example. I grew up, and it's probably a lot of in business, right? Don't ask anyone to do what you wouldn't do. I thought, okay, well, if I work my hardest and I do all these things, then I can expect other people to do that. And I realized along the way, and I was probably in my 40s, that actually that wasn't exactly it. Yes, we want to model behavior. We want to look in the mirror and feel good about who we are. But on the other hand, I had to take another step in the world that's evolving and understanding where another person was, and perhaps my activities weren't their activities, but it didn't lessen them. As long as they met expectations and we aligned on our goals that we had to achieve, then we'd be okay. It was a really valuable insight for me.
Sure. Well said. There is also a lot of talk about inclusion all over the world. Everyone is talking inclusion. I'd like to get your perspective on how much of it is actually being achieved.
Listen, I can tell you, on one hand, I can be flippant and say not nearly enough, right? It's not nearly enough. And so I come at this two ways. One, having been the single woman at a table, and many other variables that were singular, and not feeling I was a part of it, and then ultimately feeling a part of it, like getting through that barrier. Right. It's still very prominent. I will also say, and this is something I'm still studying, and I've read a lot about it, is we all come to life feeling that we are an other in some way. Correct. And I kind of try to encourage us and myself to use that as a superpower, which is, if I feel othered, others feel othered, how do we use that feeling of not being a dominant to make others feel included the way we would want to, right? So that we end up living in a more inclusive world. Because it's interesting. On one hand, like here in America, obviously for a very long time, white males are dominant. It's been a dominant. There's this whole thing about our Constitution. Women aren't even mentioned. Obviously, people of color were like 3/4. All of that is historically laced through. Correct. How do we move beyond that? Well, as I said before, part of it is understanding our bias. Think of what we've been told, not only as we sit here today, but what's been in our history that has gotten us here today. And for those who ignore the lessons of history, they are doomed to repeat them. That is my favorite quote. People always ask you, because it's true. We have to understand. And that takes an intentionality, right? That's why I love what you're doing. When you told me, it's like, yes. You said there's all these people who have stories, let's share them. Correct. And then you have the ability to reach all these people. Correct. And say, today I say something that reaches somebody that hadn't before. And I'm grateful to you for. No, thank you. In fact, I'm grateful people of your stature have at least speaking about some of these thoughts to reach thousands and thousands of people around the world. Moving on, Donna, one of the challenges I have seen about inclusion are the restrictions we have from culture, from society, from elders. What are your thoughts on
how do we start to tackle some of these biases and some of these challenges that culture, society, and elders place on each one of us?
Wow. I don't know. That's a really interesting and a very challenging question, but it's real. I think all of us know no matter where we are in the world, we'll hear a grandparent or something say something that makes you cringe a little bit. And it also makes you realize they grew up in a different time, right? So the lessons that they were surrounded in, the language that they use, right? The world changed.
Yeah.
And they didn't get the message yet. Many have, but many haven't. I can only speak personally about my parents. And yet, there are people my parents' age are in government, so it makes you hope that they have advanced. I give them some grace as well. And then I spend time talking to them about them and say, listen, here's where we are today, and I understand what we've been through, and we try to have really good connections. I will say the work that I do today on Generation W and Generation Wow strongly believes and supports intergenerational connectivity. And the reason is when we do a lot of mentoring, it's always been like, well, I am more powerful because I have more experience and I've done this. No, I have more experience to share with you. But the amount of learning that goes from a younger generation person to an older generation is also very powerful. I'm so interested to hear, what are kids thinking today and why are they thinking that? Now, there are those general adult-child dynamics that always happen. I think they're generationally, like they always happen. But, I didn't grow up with an iPhone in my pocket.
Correct.
Right? My kids almost did. Their kids, when that should happen, definitely will.
Sure.
Right? So that technology piece alone is a huge game changer in how you view the world and your experiences. Unless we take the time to do intergenerational connectivity, then we lose that precious passage of knowledge both ways.
Well said. Well said. So one more question on inclusion, and then I'll move to your book. The new generation of younger leaders, the younger people, the millennials, the Gen Zs, they have brought in an absolutely new perspective, a breath of fresh air into inclusion. They're not willing to accept what their parents or grandparents used to say. I'd love to get your perspective on how you are seeing the younger generation handling inclusion.
I don't know that I can make any broad pronouncements. I think there is a younger generation that certainly has moved through LGBTQ plus in a way that's way more progressive than anything we were able to live through. That's in a general sense, right? Racially and ethnically, I hear here in America, kids saying like race doesn't matter to us. And that's an interesting comment in and of itself, right? What they're saying is we accept everybody. That's a way of saying we accept everybody, but in the sense race should matter, right? Who we are, the color of our skin. Again, when I spoke earlier about the fact that all of that helps define us and our prism perspective on the world. And so we have to see that coming back to be able to love and understand that as well. I don't know why in some ways I tend to think about the exceptions here. I think there still is really not enough inclusion. I think these culture wars that we're seeing, not only here in the States, but globally, are troubling. And what are they really all about? We all hear that we are tribal at our most essence.
Correct.
Essential sense of all of us.
Correct.
Okay, so fine, but we're in more advanced thinking, are we? Like to be. We need to be more inclusive. I think our kids definitely can lead the way. And we're looking to them, especially when I guess when we look at something like climate change, right? Look at where our kids globally are in terms of encouraging us to be more mindful of truly their home, which we will depart and they will have.
Correct. Well said. So I've got time for one more question, and I'm going to move to your book. Yes. You're the author of a book titled Wowsdom, The Girl's Guide to the Positive and the Possible. Uh,
Can
tell
I
me,
show? Can I show it?
yeah, please do. Please
Okay,
do.
hold on. You can edit this part out. Should have had it right here, but here we go. Wowsdom, the Girls Guide.
Okay, that's a great book, and is it available on Amazon and other
Yeah, it is.
platforms? Okay, so I'm going to ask my viewers and listeners to check out the book written by Donna Orender, and she's showing it to you.
Yes.
But tell me a little bit about your book and what was your hypothesis in writing this?
Oh, well, thank you for asking that, because actually it ties into what we just spoke about. As I told you, we have a teen girl program called Generation Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And at our big thought leadership event every year, we do something on girls. Because at the end of the day, and with all due respect, even to my sons and my husband, I say, we are all girls at one point. And by the way, biologically, there is a time when we are all female.
Absolutely.
And I paired them. One year I paired young girls with women who are 65 and older.
Mm-hmm.
And how is that going to work?
Amazing.
It was magical. It was magnetic. There was like a force field around them. And I looked at them and I said, oh my God, this is wowsdom. This is the wow of girls and the wisdom of women.
Amazing.
So let's write a book. And one of the programs we do is we write letters to our younger and future selves. And so we said, let's capture some of those letters. And they're performed at our Generation Wow event. And we captured all those letters. And I'll show you just here. Here's a good one, right? Embrace.
Wow. Yeah.
By J.P. Opian. And then it's surrounded by, here, always remember we are resilient. This is the Chin.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's really, really great. And then it's surrounded in, all because 10 signs of unhealthy relationships, or
Fantastic.
how to eat well, or how to, like, you know what I mean? And then we always do this.
Live your purpose. Fantastic. Fantastic.
So it's actually, it's a work of incredibly passionate purpose, trying to help kids and women. We actually wrote it for girls or and boys. My sons have read it. To let them know that, hey, you're not alone in this world. I read this book like 20 something times. And every time I'm feeling like, if all of these people, with all of the things that they have had to deal with, could do this world, I can do this world.
Fantastic.
And I also appreciate the fact that they want to tell me that some of the things that I should pay attention to now, so I wouldn't have to look back and say, if I only knew, right? So that's why we did it. Yeah.
Fascinating. Don, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your journey, about the amazing stuff you're doing for women and girls, not just in the US, but around the world. Thank you for talking to me and sharing your thoughts on inclusion. And thank you for showing me your book, Wowsdom, and all the some of the interesting chapters from that book. So thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing stories and caring about all of us as you do.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.